Well, hello, Leeds United fans. It is the first legs that are done. What have you made of it? Are you happy? Are you sad? We've got some notes to go through, and everybody, I want to please get your comments in the section below, and we'll get through them. As always, please get your likes in the video, and yeah, we've got bonus bits coming throughout the week as well. Everybody, like we always say, we'll have the Counterpoint show with Joe Wayman tomorrow at 10 a.m. Make sure you come around. Me and Joe are going to be speaking and talking everything Leeds United as well. We've got a recording of Across the Pond with Gabe, and also on Tuesday we will have this week's edition of the debrief. I know you guys like a bit of a routine. Don't worry, I have got you all sorted when it comes to that. So as I say, please get your comments in the section below. I can believe Paul's there. I can believe I can see Gail's there as well. Aaron's a new member. Shout out to you. And let's get into some sort of serious stuff as well. That let me just move the camera a sec. There we go. Oh, a little bit easier. But let me just get into some serious bits that we're going to have to speak about. There has been a Leeds fan that has been attacked. I don't know the full details, but I am as stunned about this as many of you guys will be at Carrow Road. I've been to Carrow Road twice, and there is barely an argument at Carrow Road, never mind this. I'd like to give my condolences to the individual. I don't know his name yet, but he is, by all intents and purposes, he's been slashed. Some people are reporting. I'm not 100% sure if this is completely true, but there is an image of a Leeds fan with a very bloody neck, and I hope he's okay. I hope he gets back to his family. But allegedly, there were Norwich fans chanting about Istanbul, which is just such a crying shame. And we talk about all of these horrendous events, and still, there's fans who are chanting about, who every single game, which I can't say his name, a well-known convicted, what, that is sang about Leeds United every single game, which I cannot believe is not stamped out, and it's classified as banter with the horrors that this man bestowed on this country. And it's classed as banter. It's almost in the same bracket as Leeds are falling apart. Again, it's sang by every club. It's not banter. It's not funny. It's a disgrace, really. And that should be stamped out. There should be some warnings to clubs who sing that. Fan bases are going to get, they're going to get a big fine, something like that. And if it needs to get more serious, it needs to get more serious. But I'm a massive fan of chants like this, and anti-Semitic chants, discriminatory chants on all levels being completely evacuated from sports because there's no place for it. And it's such a shame that when it comes to this chant in particular, the what chant that's sang every single game, that this is just allowed. I don't understand why it's allowed. Other chants aren't allowed in various other members of the country. But what I will say as well is the Istanbul stuff we do still see quite regularly. You still see fans chanting away at it, little pockets. And unfortunately, it's not highlighted as much. I don't know why. But unfortunately, outside the game today as well, there was an incident. It was an incident of a gentleman. As I say, we don't know all the details, but from the brief details that we do know right now, the gentleman was just asking people to stop chanting about the game. Stop chanting about the game. A lover, not a fighter, from what I've seen on social media. Not a fighter whatsoever, not involved in that sort of stuff. Just asked the group to shush, and he's barely got out alive. That's what's been shown and discussed online. It's that serious. So it's such a shame that this is still happening in the modern game, and stuff like this is in and around our grounds, and that football is taken to that level. Look, we all get passionate, we all get frustrated, we all get angry, but to take it to that level, it's an absolute embarrassment. It's a disgrace, and I can't really use the words to describe it because it's that appalling. And this has happened today in a really good occasion for Leeds. Leeds fans and Norwich fans always seem to get along, but there's a minority of absolute dickheads, and I will say that. And it's such a shame that that's happened today. So I hope he gets home to his family okay. I hope his family are okay. I hope it doesn't shake him up too much, because I tell you what, I wouldn't be going back to a football game if something like that had happened to me. No chance. I'd be packing up. So shout out to this individual. I hope he gets better. And listen, the more details that come out over the next couple of days, I'm sure will inform you guys as well, because it's not just about footballing aspects that we'll try and inform you about on this channel. It's unfortunate incidents like this which occur still in 2024 with grown men. Who knew, everybody? It's a real shame, and Norwich City have let themselves down today. Really let themselves down. But let's get into some of the football game, everybody, and move on from that. So, okay, so the game today, I guess the overarching feeling for me is that it was a good point. It was a good point for Leeds, and we're speaking about the on the instant match reaction with my old man, which you can go and get, everybody. You can go and watch, and it's well worth it. But we're speaking about some of the things that we could have done, and it's very much half glass empty in terms of half glass full, because I believe that Leeds team today could have won. I feel that they could have won. I feel Norwich's one shot on target, their weak attack, their sort of poor excuse of build up. Really, I thought Norwich in certain phases of the game were okay. They were quite dynamic at the start, but I thought they really tailed off. And in that second half, I felt like it was there for Leeds United. I feel it was there on a plate for us to go out there, and if a couple of passes had have connected, if the interplay had been a bit sharper, if we hadn't have been as sloppy in phases. And do you know what, guys? Ultimately, if we'd have been a bit braver, I felt if we were braver there, we could have got 1, 2, maybe even 3 goals. I felt we were getting into those pockets that we got in pre-international break. And I just felt that we had some moments today. We had some real moments. And yeah, potentially we could have taken it away from Norwich. But there's a real good element of what's happened today. Leeds United have got a clean sheet, which is very important because there has been a lack of clean sheets aside from the Sunderland game post-international break. So in a pressure cooker situation, going down there where they were all up for it, they were setting fireworks off outside our ground. Clearly, unfortunate scenes were going on outside the ground as well. So it was a big game, and it was built up to be a big game. And the Leeds players will know that with it being a playoff anyway. But ultimately, Leeds did finish 20 odd points ahead of Norwich, so we should have that edge on them anyway, in my personal opinion. And what I felt happened today was I felt he went with the Gareth Southgate approach. I felt 4-3-3 we were calling for it midweek, and I was saying on multiple shows, I was invited kindly on a few shows last week and was speaking on the Patreon and on here about Leeds moving to a 4-3-3. And I said it, and I said, if he moves away from the 4-2-3-1, it could get the best out of Perot because he can almost drop into that false 9 approach, and you can get Nonso and Somerville inverting almost as your strikers, your pacey strikers, your inverted wingers. And I thought that would have worked. It might have caused a little bit of confusion at the back for Norwich. And in a strange sort of way, when I saw the 4-3-3, I was happy. I was really happy. Archie in the 10 was interesting, although I did think it was more of a Gruev in the 6 and then Kamara and Archie as 8s. That's how I saw it. And Rutter obviously going as the number 9. Now, Rutter as the number 9, I think we all know that hasn't worked, but I get why Farke did it in a sense, because Rutter is physically able to compete with Gibson and Shane Duffy. Shane Duffy, who I didn't know should have been playing, by the way, but that's a different topic. But yeah, he's the one who's physically going to be able to compete with them. He's played in the number 9 before, and Farke is a risk-averse manager. Plain and simple, he's a risk-averse manager, so he's not going to go with something which is quite an anomaly, an outlier. He's going to go with someone who's tried and tested in a way. So he did that. Rutter started up front in the number 9 position, and some physical battles, actually. I thought Rutter did quite well. The ball up in the air. It was put up in the air a few times by Joe Rodon, and I thought Rutter competed quite well, actually, with Gibson and Duffy. What I will say, though, is I just don't think it's as fluent as a number 9. And I think, you guys know that. And, I've spoken about that multiple times. It's not as fluid as a number 9. A number 9 is going to give you so much more incisive runs. They're going to be running off the centre back. They're going to be running those channels a little bit more than Rutter was. They're just going to be a little bit more explosive off that line. And do you know what was interesting, actually, everybody? A striker, a proper number 9, knows really how to stay on side. They've got a knack of it. I remember back in the day with Ian Wright, Lineker, Michael Owen was unbelievable at it. They always had the knack of staying on side. And I think it's those knacks that you can't just, a random player who's been playing number 10 can't just slot into a number 9 role, because a number 9 is a number 9. That's why I think Perot struggled a little bit, and why we've looked better with Patrick Bamford. You need a number 9 as a number 9. And I think it's playing in that position your whole life. It's knowing the runs. It's knowing what sort of jinky moves to make and when to make them and how to make them. And I think I understood what he was trying to do. It was the 3 up top who, when they actually get going together, are really mesmerizing to watch. I think we saw little bits of that against Borough, but the key problem with that is Pat Bamford was up top, right? Pat Bamford was up top, and that was the big difference. You had someone to essentially hold it up, and the three behind you were just linking up really, really well. And I thought we lost that a little bit with Rutter. Archie Gray, struggling, really struggling at the minute. Really, really struggling, bless him. And I think we're all very much like that with Archie. We'll all protect him. He's in this little ball of which he's only a young lad. Constructively with Archie, never going to hammer him. Try not to hammer any Leeds players, to be quite honest with you. I might get marginally frustrated with them sometimes and don't understand why they don't do certain things. But, I'm just a fan, of course. But I think he's been really poor. I do, everybody. I think he's been really poor for a while now. And the data, I'm not going to go through the data today, but the data was really bad on him in terms of successful passes, in terms of dribbles, in terms of involvement, in terms of duels. It was all really, really bad. Probably one of the poorest data representations on the Leeds team. And I think he really struggled today. And there's a lot of people in my comment section saying they thought he played really well. I don't think he did. And I don't think the eye test or the data backs that up at all, to be honest with you. I thought in terms of Kenny McLean, he did well to keep him quiet. But I thought in this game in particular, Archie's entire role was to nullify McLean and not to play Archie's game. And it was a big game for him today because Archie, in that number 8 role, it's where we've all been wanting him. We played there with Ampadu. Ampadu was almost in the 6 and he was in the 8 when we played Chelsea. And that relationship was really nice, the dynamic, the synergy between the two. And it worked. It really worked. Someone to cover, someone to sweep up, but someone to do the proper things at the back, just screening that defence, but also someone who can move ahead a little bit further. And I thought with that added layer of protection with another midfielder in there, I thought it was going to be a really good game for Archer, and I thought he was going to be able to dictate really what happened and would probably give McLean the run around as well. A little bit of youth versus experience there, of which I thought maybe McLean got the edge on it today. Something else I wanted to mention as well with McLean and the comparison between him and Gruev, two similar players in a sense, two deep-lying playmakers or deep-lying ball winners who play in the number 6 role. McLean can change it up a little bit, but as he's got a little bit older, McLean's gone back a little bit. Now, what I can tell you with 100% certainty is Leeds went in with an 850,000 bid for James McLean. James McLean? Is it James McLean? I don't think it is. Kenny McLean, not James McLean. Kenny McLean in the summer, which was rejected and laughed out the door by Norwich. Very interesting because Leeds have almost picked up a very similar profile in Gruev, maybe a little bit less physical, a little bit less meaty, but someone in Kenny McLean who has a vast amount of experience. And what you saw a lot from McLean was today, even with a Leeds United press, which I thought was a little bit more rigorous today, he'd get the ball. And as much as he could, because I thought he was being pressed actually quite well by Leeds and Archie. I thought Archie, in terms of defensively, I thought he did an okay job on it. It was just when Leeds had the ball, he struggled to really get in the game. But McLean will play that ball over the top, and it was pinpoint. He did it 2 or 3 times, and I remember marking it down whilst we were doing the watch along because I wanted to speak about it afterwards. 2 or 3 times he'd get the ball and pass it. Now, I think a big problem with this Leeds United side, a lot of people will look at Byron, they'll look at Rodon, and we'll get into that in just a little bit, and the build-up from the back. But I also think what a lot of people need to consider is how important the defensive midfielder is. We've had such a massive importance and reliance and dependability put on defensive midfielders over the years, whether it comes to whether it's Ampadu at the start of the season, whether or not it's Tyler Adams, whether or not it's Calvin Phillips. So they are almost the crux of the side. They are the quarterback, the orchestrator, the conductor of what happens, especially if you're a possession-based side. The problem with Eli Gruev, and I keep mentioning this, and I will mention this until I'm blue in the face, it's a real criticism of him. But what it is there has to be conversations going on behind the scenes about developing this boy's game. He's only 23 years of age, but how closed his body is. And if you've ever played in midfield, if you've ever played the game, when you receive the ball, you can't always receive it on your back foot. You can't. So if the ball was to come across Gruev's body, you can't always receive it on the right foot, obviously, because if he's getting pressed, they're going to intercept him. And that's problematic, obviously. The problem with Eli Gruev is because he's not forced into making long arcing balls, his entire role in build-up play is to just funnel the ball to 3 men. And these 3 men are Eli Gruev's entire crux when it comes to this team. Ilan Meslier, Joe Rodon, and Ethan Ampadu, with the occasional spread the ball out wide. He's almost now completely wedded and used to the fact that this is his role in the system. But I think that really hurts Leeds because I think even with Kenny McLean today, you saw him trying to find those pockets, and it was interesting in the second half. Gruev picked 2 balls where he went forward, and he picked that pocket. He picked that central attacking midfield pass, and do you know what? He lost the ball on the first time he did it. And what I found so interesting, he didn't do it again. And I actually, on the watch along, applauded him. I loved it. Because as I say, everybody, I'm not here to bash. I want to try and give you guys my insight on football as well. If he's at that point and he's trying to feed the ball into Rutter, and Rutter can do a little bit of magic on the back turn. So Gruev received the ball on the back foot, which he didn't do throughout the whole game. He opened his body up and then fed the ball through. And he lost the ball, but I clapped him. It's not risk averse. It's actually risking, which at points in that game we needed to do. And I loved that from him. He's got it in his locker. He's got a good left foot on him. He needs to start doing that more, because if he's going to be a deep line playmaker for the rest of his career, or a DM, and his entire game is going to be based on a closed body approach, he's not going to get anywhere. He will not make it in the Premier League. It's never going to happen, And next season, it wouldn't surprise me if Leeds weren't to look at putting someone else in there. And let's be right, when Ampadu comes back in, Gruev's out anyway. And you don't want Gruev and Ampadu in there because they're too defensive, really, in their nature. And I thought from a tactical perspective, it was really nice to see Gruev do that. But the worrying thing was his confidence. As soon as he did it and Leeds lost the ball and they went on a counter-attack, he then didn't do it again. You've got to be brave in these scenarios. Just do it. If it doesn't happen, I love the fact that you've tried. Fantastic. Try again. And I just thought there was good and bads there, but I think the extra midfielder really didn't help Leeds. I felt maybe keeping Kenny McLean a little bit quiet is always a good thing, but the extra midfielder in that first half and a lot of that second half, we didn't really see it. We didn't really see the benefit of it. And I think it was because it was a little bit more risk averse. And I actually thought Glenn Kamara played really, really well. In that second half, he grew into it. And once again, Kamara's the only one who's going forward and trying to force something when it comes to Leeds getting forward. And I think that's a massive, massive positive for Glenn Kamara. I actually think in the second half, it was one of his better games in the second half of the season, in my opinion. A lot of you guys might disagree with that, but I do feel a lot of the time Kamara can be a little bit of a scapegoat. I think he has been sloppy. Will agree. And the silky smooth operator tag has definitely gone out of the window from the start of the season where he wouldn't lose the ball. But the thing is, with Kamara is Kamara in that midfield, especially today in that trio, he's the only one who's risking. He's the only one who's getting the ball and trying to move Leeds forward. But once again, what I will say is that midfield still isn't ticking a little bit. And I think Mr. Ampadu would help that out. So what I will say as well is the penalty should have been given. I thought the penalty should have been given in this game in particular. Listen, he was fouled outside the box, and then there was a continuation of it in the box, which inhibited his ability to get the ball. And why would Nonto just fall on the floor when he's in a very advantageous position and the centre back hasn't fully covered the corner of which he's going to aim for? It's a penalty all day. It's a penalty all day for me. And listen, as a boxing match, I think Leeds would have won it by points. But I thought, by proxy, it was a very, very sort of like average performance from both sides. But what the beautiful thing is that was Norwich's big game at home. And if that's their performance at home, we know they're 19th in the form table when it comes to away from home, which is a big statistic to take out of this. If that's their home form, if I'm a Norwich fan, I'm worried about them away. Because, you have got to look at him. We'll discuss this a little bit at the end. Leeds United have not been consistent at home, winning 4 at home. But overall, we still have a fantastic home record this season, which still, I believe, sees us top when it comes to home form. The flowing football, everybody, the thing of the past. It's something that I wanted to speak about in terms of just Leeds United's build-up. And I wanted to discuss Meslier. I wanted to discuss Rodon. And obviously, I wanted to discuss as well Sam Byram, who I thought really struggled today. A couple of big tackles, a recovery tackle where he was out of position and the ball was played over the top to, I think it was Johnny Rowe or Borja Sainz. Fantastic tackle, really good recovery tackle. And he put another really good meaty one in. I think duel-wise, when it's 50-50 with Sam, he's really decent. I think where Sam is completely limited as a footballer is build-up. And I think when there's any press offered on him whatsoever, like a lot of this team, because I think the manager encourages safety and risk averseness, if that is a word. I think it's to go back to the centre-backs, keep possession, keep the ball, but avoid doing something which is going to enable you to lose the ball. And I think that's the big difference between the back line under Bielsa and the midfield under Bielsa in comparison to those two components. under Daniel Farke. I feel with Marcelo Bielsa, and I'm only using this because of when we were in the Championship playoffs last, you used to see real full flowing Leeds United across the pitch, and it was hell for leather. It was attack, attack, attack. But with this Leeds side, it's very much more. I do feel that the attack is funneled, and I've said this to you guys before, through two players, and I think the rest of the team a handbrake on. And I think that's so evident, and that's been evident all season. And if Somerville had been putting 50% of the performances and Rutter 50% of the performances, I actually think Farke would have been in a bit of trouble earlier on, because if your build-up's just through two players and your game plans are through two players for 46 games of the season and they're not performing, then you're in trouble. But those players have just been literally two of the best players the Championship's ever seen, backed up by stats, backed up by the eye test, backed up by everything. So the flowing footy, someone said to me, have we ever played flowing footy this season? I said, well, yeah, I think a lot of it has been based on those two. I think when those two are at the peak of their powers, they're not completely knackered and they're playing free. And they're just doing stuff without just being kicked all over the pitch and 5 or 6 players being on each one of them. They're decent. But I think there's a bit of a maybe post-international break, maybe teams have just been almost preying on the fact that the referee is going to be shocking. Because I think there's been a lot more kicks for Rutter, a lot more kicks for Somerville post-international break. And I think what you've seen really probably post the Coventry game, when they've done jobs, especially on Somerville, I think you've seen teams actually mirror that. And I think you've seen it affect Somerville's performances a lot, because whenever he gets the ball, you saw it today, 3 players jump into action. So if your entire build-up is down that side of the pitch and it's between, Cree, Rutter, Firpo, but if Cree's not able to get free and Cree's not able to be that dynamic sort of metronome of a player, you're going to struggle. And I think what we're seeing is the flowing football that was maybe previously with Leeds United is being impacted by those factors. The fatigue, the player's been out of form, but ultimately I feel a lot of it is with the fact that Chris Somerville's performances haven't been 10 out of 10 or 9 out of 10. Yet post-international break, he scored an absolutely unbelievable goal against Watford, an unbelievable goal against Borough. He's still got assists. He's still been part of the build-up, but yet he's still not on that level. And it's very, 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 very representative to me and similar to what Rafinha was doing at the back end of his career at Leeds United as well. They're literally, in my opinion, like 2 similar case studies. But there's an argument Rafinha was playing with a crapper team at that point. But yeah, I just think that's something to keep an eye on. What I will say as well is I wanted to touch on Junior Firpo. And I'd like to give him a bit of a clap because today what we saw is another performance of which I was completely proud of. This boy has come a long way. Start of the season, players' form can change, but I just wasn't having the guy. And as I've said to you guys, I don't really change opinions on players. It doesn't really happen. Form can impact my opinion on a player, but do I then think that player long term is still going to be a good option for the club? Well, I might do, but it's likely that I still stick with my original opinion, because I don't think technically, let's say at the age of 25, 26, 27, 28, you're going to develop a massive upward trajectory. I just don't think it happens. Are you going to develop a steely mentality from 28, 29, 30? And I don't think it's going to happen. I think when you're a footballer, unless you get a really great manager impacting you at the top level, that's not going to happen. And I'm talking, your Marcelo Bielsa, your Pep Guardiola's, your Jurgen Klopp's, your Mikel Arteta. I just don't think that happens. So when I met mind upon a player, I met mind upon a player really, and form can aid that. And Junior Firpo, I've still got the mindset of what I had last season. So I'm not really backing down on that. But what I didn't expect was this form in the Championship. We spoke about it when he was coming back from injury. Could he be a player who's going to be coming back into this Leeds side and be really, really good? We knew that he'd been at Betis, he'd been at Barcelona, so there was some pedigree there. He didn't want to leave in the summer, which was a big tick point with all the deserters leaving. But also at the same time, he was dropping down a level. And that has allowed Somerville to develop. It's allowed Rutter to develop. It's allowed Ampadu to develop even further. But as well, some of your experienced players as well, to just take that drop down, to not be in the La Liga, to not be spoken about playing on international duty, to not be, criticised at the highest level for your positional awareness, to come down and to not be punished every single week like you get in the Premier League. I think it's massively aided Junior Firpo, and he's come up against a player in Johnny Rowe, who would arguably, aside from Crysencio Somerville in this division, be argued as the best winger in the division. And Junior Firpo has come up against him twice now and completely pocketed him. And I thought Firpo was aggressive in the right way. He gave away a free kick at one point, which I thought was he didn't need to do, but he was aggressive at the right stages. But also, I thought he was very progressive as well when he get into that final third. He was really good on the ball. And what I will say about Junior Firpo is when you look at several angles of that offside goal, was it actually offside? He followed his run. He kept going. Lovely little interlink in between Firpo, Kamara, and Rutter. And listen, good finish in the end as well, wasn't it? So, yeah, unlucky for that as well. But I just want to say his development has been shocking to me. Maybe not shocking. Actually not shocking. Not shocking at all. But eye-opening. I felt I didn't expect him to do that. I thought he'd have more injuries towards the back end of the season. He hasn't. He's managed to stay fit, dependable, and reliable, which is a massive asset in football. And listen, yeah, I think he's done really, really well. So a lot of people as well are talking about Dan James at this moment in time. Dan James, Conor. I picked Dan James over Willie Gnonto. I wouldn't. I really wouldn't. And I think it's potentially the game that we're going to face against Norwich on Thursday. I think what you saw from the fullbacks today, interestingly, from a tactical perspective, is Giannoulis and Jack Stacey on the back constantly on the back of Somerville and Willie Gnonto. So they're pushing them up, but they're inadvertently as well giving fouls away consistently. Now, when the ball is pinged to Willie Gnonto's feet, when the ball is pinged to Jorginho Rutter's feet, when the ball is pinged to Somerville's feet, what they're able to do is, because they're very, very technically able players, they're able to get the ball in a very, very tight space, keep the ball, and that helps with a very low center of gravity as well, which I know Dan James has as well. But the ball control of Somerville and Gnonto in particular is very, very, very good. Very good. And certainly, Dan James is always going to be quicker than Willie Gnonto, always. So that ball in behind, you always want Dan James on that. So if you've got a team who's going to have a high line, you want Dan James on that right-hand side. It's, it's very, very dependent on who you're playing. So, if you're getting a team with a high line, there is a conversation that Dan James is the better option. When you've got a team who are getting really, really tight to your man and you need to get out a little bit at points, which Leeds will naturally have to do, you want Willie Gnonto on the ball. You want Crysencio Somerville on the ball because technically they are more able than others. I think, when you look at Dan James, I don't really want him up against Giannoulis for a lot of the game because I think he'd be picked a lot of the time. I think Giannoulis is a good left back at this division. And I think Dan James' his speed, his 1v1 ability has definitely developed this season. But I want a more technically able player on the ball. And I also want a player who I feel is a match winner on the pitch in a playoff semi-final second leg, which I still think Willie Gnonto is. And he's the better overall footballer. You might look at the projection of the season and say, Dan James put more effort in. What you're talking about, Conor, is the second top scorer. All valid points. But when we're talking about how Leeds are going to play against Norwich, of which we've seen elements of today, how we're going to play against Norwich, where we're going to get a little bit of joy. I thought we got a lot of joy on that right-hand side, actually, with Willie Gnonto. Probably more joy on that right than we did on the left. I feel Gnonto is the right option for that, in my opinion. So what else did we figured out from this? Well, apparently, according to Canary Call, which is a Norwich-based podcast, Josh Sargent walked out fine. He wasn't on crutches or anything like that. So we'll have to bear in mind what goes on. Have to keep in tune with what happens with him because I think he would be a big miss. The one to keep an eye on is Ashley Barnes. He was out for this game, but there is a massive likelihood that he's going to be back for the second game, which I think is going to be a big, big boost for them. Another thing as well, something to keep an eye on, is Wagner's weird game plans. Now, we saw it against Leicester. We saw it against Leeds United. We really have. And David Wagner has this weird notion, which I never realized when he was at Huddersfield. I never kept up with him at Schalke, but I've never really understood why he's done it. But he has this ability to change things up in a very bad way. And Norwich fans have multiple times this season, especially away from home, turn around and go, well, why has he devised a game plan like that? Why has he done that? And especially for the Leeds United game in particular, they didn't understand why he set up so defensively for the majority of it. Leicester, they just went to Leicester and the game plan was all wrong. They just sat back and got pummeled. So if he does that again, if his sort of entire thing is to get to penalties, which it could be, it very much could be in this game, that might go against him. But it's all very, very much dependent, as we've mentioned several times as well. It's all very much dependent on the pressure aspect. And I think I've said this several times, like with Ellen Road, and you guys have heard me say it as well. Ellen Road's completely unique. Completely unique. Players can glow, special players can glow, and that badge can't affect them. But as we know, in recent times, I've just been on a Norwich forum, and all of their hope is pinned on Leeds crumbling. The Ellen Road atmosphere. Now, multiple teams, West Bromwich Albion, even today, will be thinking, Southampton, it's going to be a bit tricky that. Hopefully, we'll put a game plan in there to go against them. You know, it's going to be solid at the back. Corbrand's going to set up in a certain way. We're going to hit them on the counter attack with Wallace, Asante, and Diangana. And I'm sure Norwich will be doing that. But a lot of the fan base are already buying into it and into the notion that Leeds are going to fall apart again. And that's not a negative. I completely understand why they're doing it, because they've actually been there and actually put a beating on Leeds when Ellen Road's been exceptionally tense and we didn't know what was going on when Farkas Norwich came to town. But the last time we were in the playoffs, we all know what happened. It was televised. We are the biggest club in the division. It's always televised and it's remembered. Of course it is. And that's essentially where that chant was first brewed, really. I started to gain a bit of notoriety anyway. So they are all talking about that already. So this isn't just a Leeds thing. This is a national thing. People are very, very aware of Leeds in crux moments, bottling it. So are we going to freeze, or are we going to stand up and take it on our shoulders and go and win the game? And as we proved today, be the better team and just get through to Wembley. Now, this could be a very comfortable evening for Leeds United. I firmly believe it. We've got the quality. We've definitely got the personnel, as I've just mentioned. It intertwines with quality, of course, and the options off the bench. So we could be winning this game quite comfortably, quickly, but it could go the other way as well. Now, Ellen Road is going to be a cauldron, but we all know if they score, if it gets a bit tense, if they start getting the ball and manipulating it, it's 0-0. It's a fresh game. And that's where Ellen Road can be 50-50 on nights like this. Not because of the fans, but the players feel it. So Ellen Road, for me, it still doesn't feel as advantageous as many other home grounds would. And it's because I think it's not just Leeds fans that play into it. It's everyone who plays into it. And I think that's just a little bit of a worry. But the positive is, listen, it's playoffs and Leeds United have the ability across the pitch to beat Norwich. And we've done it before. That's what with a team with a very young, potentially fragile mentality, you've done it before, lads. Go out and do it again. A quick discussion on Southampton and West Bromwich Albion as well. It looks like Shea Adams is going to be available for the second leg, which will help them in terms of a press. They were trying to do it today, but I thought West Brom did really well. West Brom, we did a watch long for it. I thought they pressed well. I thought they were effective. I thought they got the game plan spot on, of which we didn't do against Southampton. Southampton weren't able to play out against them. They were getting caught continuously by Mikey Johnston, by Asante, and they were doing a really, really good job of doing that. Moat was getting involved in a press as well, and they committed to a press. And I think that's the way to get at Southampton. But West Brom nullified a lot of their front four, I thought, and that was resulting in Adam Armstrong being taken off and obviously Ross Stewart coming on. But I thought it was interesting how it was split, that game. And I want to leave you guys with a thought. It was split by how quality the keepers were. You know, Alex McCarthy, who's come in for Bazuna, obviously who's been injured throughout the majority of the season. Who just picked an injury and he'll be out for the season. And Alex Palmer, who's in the net for West Bromwich Albion, and he's a Premier League goalkeeper. And he made a reflex save, of which I have to say I don't think Elan makes that save. I really don't. And I think the interesting part about that game in particular was it was split by the quality of the keeper. And at some point, I feel in these next two games, if we were to get to Wembley, you need to rely on the quality of your goalkeeper, because teams are good. The teams in the playoff mix are good. They're going to break through. There's going to be a shot on goal. Yeah. Something's going to happen. The keeper has to split you from the rest. And I think you saw that in the West Bromwich Albion and Southampton games today. Both keeper, but especially Alex Palmer for that reflex save on Ross Stewart. That's a top save in these pressure moments. Really good reflex save. His distribution was excellent. Handling was good. He was barking at his defenders, and he had experience in there. Furlong, Bartley, Conor Townsend. He's got experience across the back line. We need to see a little bit more of that from Elan Mele, I think. Once again today, a few frightening moments for me. But guys, I'm going to leave it there. Please make sure you join us tomorrow for Counterpoint with myself and Joe Wayman. Keep getting your comments in, everybody, and we'll read some of them, obviously, on the show tomorrow. But that's been it from me. Hope you've enjoyed the content today. Please make sure you like the content as well, everybody. Just make sure it shows higher on the algorithm as well. Check out some Patreon bits if you want some bonus stuff we've got across the pond tomorrow. And everybody, it's been an absolute pleasure today.